The denials have been categorical and frequent. Tony Blair, Labour's most electorally successful leader ever, will not be returning to frontline politics and will not be seeking a Brexit-related role. So that, it seems, is that. Except that it probably isn't. Those in his inner circle say they wouldn't be surprised to see the former PM reappear, and indeed the frequency with which he reminds us how vacant the centre ground is does little to dispel the notion he's measuring up the metaphorical curtains for it. He wants, his office tells us, to remain part of the debate. He's also reported to be looking for a new base in London now. So would Tony Blair be warmly welcomed into the British political fray, or is he seen as a busted, still toxic flush Brexiteers who believe the latter are getting quite excited at the prospect he might come back? Joining me now, then, Caroline Lucas, joint leader of the Greens, and John McTernan, former advisor to Blair. Very nice to have you both here. John, is your sense that there is something rippling below the waters, that he would quite like to come back despite the denials?
Oh, look, people are getting very excited, and correctly excited, because he's the biggest political figure of our era, and people can't stop talking about him because everybody wants him back in some way, shape or form. He's not gone away. He's been in politics. He's been talking about politics, commenting on politics. He had a great essay in the New European about the challenges of Brexit and what the government should be doing.
When you say everyone wants him back in some shape or form, what you mean is his enemies want him back, not on their side, right?
Look, he bestrides British politics still. It's nearly a decade since he stopped being Prime Minister, stopped being an MP, and we're on television now talking about him coming back. Of course he excites people, clearly does.
Politician, Caroline Lucas, for Labour, he was the last time Labour won anything.
He was the last time Labour won anything, but the idea that that qualifies him now to come back after everything that's happened with the Iraq war, with all of the dodgy dealings with dictators, and somehow to take some kind of moral high ground in our political debate now, I think beggars belief. I mean, I think John just needs to get out more. People are not begging for him to come back, and I think the last few months, if they've told us anything, with Brexit, with Trump, is that the political establishment is not held in a great deal of respect right now. And Tony Blair, to the extent that he is associated with that, the idea that he would be a good spokesperson for the Remain campaign or for any other key issues right now, I think is just ludicrous.
You might have this perfect package. I mean, a lightning rod for everyone who hates New Labour, everyone who hates Remain, everyone who hated the Iraq war. All your enemies could just target on this one thing.
Nearly half the country voted to stay in the European Union. And there are millions of people thinking about their vote now. Car workers didn't vote for tariffs.
And you did, Caroline. Wouldn't you like to have a strong voice like that?
It's Tim Farron or Tony Blair.
I would love to have a voice, but I would not want it to be Tony Blair, because what John doesn't recognise is that the message that Tony Blair gives might not be the problem, but the messenger is. He is fundamentally contaminated, and it is quite extraordinary, really, that people like yourself just don't see that. You know, get out there in the real world. People are not talking about Tony Blair in anything other than incredibly regretful terms, because they realise that this is just such a lost opportunity. He could have been a wonderful advocate, but he is fatally compromised and fatally contaminated.
We have a Prime Minister who's not up to the job. We've got a leader of the opposition whose ambition is to make the Labour Party an ultra-left sect. And we've got Tim Farron representing the centre ground. The place is begging for a figure of the size and quality, vision and oratory of Tony Blair.
Someone who is known for lying? Someone who's taken the country to an illegal and immoral war on a false prospectus? Is that what the situation is crying out for? Absolutely not.
Does that tell you how...
Tells me what the Greens think, and it's just absolute abuse. It's ridiculous abuse, and what I expect from Caroline, but ridiculous nonsense.
Does that tell you how empty the ground is, then? If somebody who, you know, from Caroline Lucas's perspective... Yeah, but from the perspective of a strong voice for Brexit, you would presumably welcome it, but couldn't even tolerate the thought of it for Remain.
Caroline Lucas represents a strand of politics way to the left of the Labour Party, even to the left, and more destructive than John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn. Tony Blair has merely said, and he got great excitement by doing this, by saying the vast bulk of the British people are unrepresented in modern politics. At the moment, there's no voice. The opposition is terrible.
I think there is some truth in that, but the idea, I come back to the idea that Tony Blair is the person to fill that space, I think is absolutely wrong. And I think you've got the Greens, you've got the Lib Dems, you've got the Nationalists, you've got some in Labour at least, who are doing their very best to fill that space.
The sense is, post-Chilcot, presumably, he thought, you know, if you like, the boil would be lanced. It was time to carry on. He's done his 2-hour press conference, mea culpa, he's got to move forward now. Are you saying that there is no space in which he can now move forward?
I think I am saying that, and I genuinely say that with regret, because he is enormously persuasive, he is charismatic, he has huge, communication skills. He in many ways is a brilliant communicator.
And that's
but
not a lone voice, is it?
Contaminated.
That is a voice that it will echo throughout TV sets at home and throughout this country.
Labour voters, when polled, say they'd rather have Tony Blair as the leader of the Labour Party than Jeremy Corbyn. It's not surprising, because Tony Blair was not just a victor. Tony Blair today articulates a vision of where Britain should go that's far more powerful and profound than any leading politician of any of the major political parties at the moment. And that's the problem. If there was not a vacuum at the heart of British politics, we wouldn't be so interested, excited, obsessed with Tony Blair. Caroline just talks and talks and talks about him.
I haven't talked about him for ages until I was asked to come. Believe me, I don't.
Talk on and on and on about Tony. He fascinates them.
But what you are
he's a global figure.
But what you are both saying is, from a Remainers perspective, the job is not being done properly for you, right?
Not by anybody in the House of Commons. No one in the House of Commons does it.
I disagree with you about that. I think it is a great shame that Labour is not united on this, and I think Labour should be making a much stronger case to be holding the government to account when it comes to a meaningful vote, for example, on Article 50, when it comes to, I think we should have a vote on the terms.
And Tony Blair is the only person who can do this.
But that is where I disagree with him.
Labour voters, Remain voters, are being betrayed by Jeremy Corbyn. We have a Brexit vote that was the consequence of Jeremy Corbyn's betrayal of the Labour Party's commitment to the European Union. In that space, there's a vacuum for thinking inside the Labour Party, a vacuum inside the House of Commons.
The irony is that the Brexit vote was fuelled in part by the fact that people don't trust politicians anymore. Why don't they trust politicians anymore? Not least because of the way in which Tony Blair took us to war. That is the bottom line, and I'm sorry for it, but it's true.
Thank you both. Thank you very much for coming in.